Welcome to the Make a Statement podcast with Derek Robinson and Paul Tayon, presented by Mass Strategy. Let's go.
Well, everybody, welcome back to the Make a Statement podcast, where we teach you what to say, how to say it, and where to say it, because we believe everyone deserves to have their message heard. It's been a while since we've done an episode, but we are back with two very special guests. I'll introduce Ali Blades first, our campaign strategist, who's kicked Paul off of the podcast today. So welcome, Ali. That's great. We ditched him because we're doing a couple more of this style of podcast soon, which he's going to be on. So Ali is helping out with this one and has the connection to the wonderful Elena Lawson from the Canucks Autism Network. Welcome, Elena.
Hi, thank you.
So what we're doing today is it's sort of a Christmas episode. We're giving the gift of advocacy and of treasure. So we're going to do a check presentation at the end of the Canucks Autism Network. And I want to encourage you, if you're thinking, hey, who should I give to at the end of this year? Or who should I get my tax credit from? This could be a great organization, especially once you hear from Elena. And then we're also wanting to kind of give the gift of advocacy, to tell their story a little bit. And so that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to spend 20, 30 minutes doing that. So Elena, welcome. And why don't you tell us a little bit about the Canucks Autism Network? Why does it matter, and what's the ultimate goal of the organization?
Yeah, so Canucks Autism Network was founded in 2008. So for us personally, our family joined in 2019. We joined the Canucks Autism Network because our son was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. But their main focus is to provide inclusion and support to families and children throughout BC who are on the autism spectrum.
Right. So I went to your site. I've checked things out. I've talked to Ali. I know Ali has a really personal connection. The thing that I thought was really interesting was all the different sporting programs that are provided to people with autism in BC. Why the sporting programs?
I think it's just important for the inclusion. So on a personal note, for William, he was able to take part in swimming and skating and activities he wouldn't be able to do otherwise. We can't necessarily go into a public pool and he'd get overstimulated and having that experience, where Canucks Autism Network gave our family the opportunity to have more of a one-on-one quiet environment, not overstimulating, and give him the opportunity to learn, because swimming is so important. Swimming was the big one for us because he never liked water. He didn't want to be around it. There's more than just swimming and skating. There's multi-sports, there's family activities, there's support programs that they offer. It's an amazing organization.
So sorry, go ahead, Ali.
Yeah, I'll just add that, in the origin story of the Canucks Autism Network, what I think is really cool here is that, with the Canucks and the relationship with the hockey team, it seems like such a big thing, right? It seems like such a grand enterprise, but really what this is, it's a family that also has a son with autism that started this, and all throughout their programs, it really does feel like family helping family. So they're massive, and they have this massive reach all over the province, but still you just feel like you're just part of the group.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's nice too, because what I found through advocacy work and just autism in general resources is I'm on the island, and there's not a lot of it, right? And so that this network goes all over BC, and so you get the opportunity to be able to participate, and your child gets the opportunity to participate in these things that maybe wouldn't be available.
Yeah, I don't think people totally understand that. Because with autism, there's so many different kids on different areas of the spectrum, and adults too. And some are sensory seeking. So my experience is I have a little boy with autism as well that has a severe case, and he's a sensory seeking boy, where he wants the thrills, he likes the noise. But then there's other kids on the spectrum, like it sounds like your son William, that to be in an environment like that, going to a regular skating rink or a pool with people everywhere, it'd be way too much, and they'd be overwhelmed and overstimulated. So maybe talk about that a little bit, how a regular community program of hockey or swimming, it doesn't do it for a kid.
No, and it won't necessarily. So for example, too, there's the inclusion piece. So you go to a community-based swimming, skating, sports, they may not be able to have the support there. the one-on-one support. So for example, William may not be accepted onto a sports team because of his diagnosis, because he may need the extra support. Where there are so many volunteers, and they're amazing. Every experience that we've had, the volunteers are exceptional. They're friendly, they're calm. It's an amazing experience, where even pre-COVID, we had him in skating through CAN, and we were talking to one of the volunteers about doing it privately afterwards because he enjoyed it so much. So you get those connections as well with the people that are involved.
Right. So part of the benefit is definitely the network and bringing people together that want to support people with autism and helping them. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the employment opportunities and the training there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can't. Maybe Ali can. Sorry.
Yeah. So with the Canucks Autism Network, in that group that I was talking about, like, you're very much part of the process and you're very much part of the family. They also focus on giving back to the community and including those recipients of the programs and bringing them into training programs as well. And so they offer that training and they fund it and pay for everything, and then take you along to the journey. And then you can also give back. And that's truly ultimately what we all want to do, right? Is feel part of the community and feel like we're all giving back. And so this is a really cool way for you to continue on your journey with the organization. And even like William actually donated to CAN. So William starting early at 7 in his journey and giving back. Yeah. But that's the culture that CAN creates, is you're part of it, but you're also able to give back in your own way too. And so maybe Elena, you can kind of share William's journey in giving back to the organization, because I thought it was the coolest thing in the whole wide world.
So Canucks Autism Network every year does CAN Sports Day at BC Place. So it gives children and their families the opportunity to experience different types of sports and have the sports teams there. So for example, there was Kirk McLean from the Vancouver Canucks, and you had Finn, and then you had BC Lions and the Giants. Like, there was so many teams there, and it was such an amazing experience to be able to go. And an option was a fundraiser. So you had the choice to fundraise for this and put some money towards CAN. And then, of course, he was excited because the more you raised, you got some prizes. And he raised over $500 for it.
Wow.
Yeah. So he enjoys it.
Really, really.
Yeah. He's 7 and he's fundraised a couple times. And then usually for my birthday every year, I do a Facebook fundraiser for CAN, just because they have supported my family so much since 2019, that just to give back is the least I can do from what they've done for us.
That's great. So talk about the founders a little bit, because I didn't realize this when I first saw the organization. I didn't realize it was sort of connected to the Vancouver Canucks, the NHL team. So how did that all happen?
So the co-owners of the Canucks, the Aquilini family, so Clara and Paolo are the ones who started the organization in 2008. Of their 4 children, like I mentioned earlier, 1 is on the autism spectrum, and so this was very much a passion project for them. And they definitely use the network of the Canucks and are a very giving community in Vancouver. But this has really grown from 2008 to now in just providing services in Vancouver to the entire province. So very cool to see. So yes, we often see a lot of things cross-promotional between the Canucks, the hockey team, and the Canucks Autism Network.
Yeah.
So for example, I think it was about a month ago, CAN reached out to families asking for stories of how the Canucks Autism Network has helped them. So I wrote a story just about William, and they called me and they offered us Canucks tickets. But unfortunately, we were on the island, and the day of the week, it didn't work out. But to be given that experience and that opportunity is again really amazing, and something that you usually wouldn't get. So.
Right. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, obviously being connected to an NHL team brings a lot of benefits, just connection wise, and being able to get into BC Place and, you know, knowing the BC Lions and Finn and all the different mascots and whatnot. So I think that's very cool. And I could see a lot of opportunities for kids. Talk to me about adults though, too. You know, we both have kids with autism. So, but what about the adults that, you know, utilize the network, and how does it help them?
So there are some adult programs. I know there's, I think it goes to 19. I've only utilized the children's programs, so I can't really speak to the adult programs specifically. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Like I saw there was a lot of, and maybe Ali, you know more about this, but the training and development opportunities, which
for the jobs.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's a really important thing to mention. You know, talking about the stigma of autism. If you say someone's autistic, it can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean just, you know, they're bad or they're slow or something like that. It can mean a large variety of different things, and people could have exceptional skill sets caused by their autism in some ways. So I don't know, Ali, if you have any thoughts on that, or what you kind of know about that.
Well, there's one story that really impacted me on the annual report for 2001, and I always look forward to the reports because they share these stories. And so, in that journey of receiving those programs and then giving back and kind of being full circle, from what I can gather, these are also, given the massive network, these are also opportunities for placement within the organization too. So one of the stories were that now one of their program recipients is now working the front desk and that greeter on the line to connect them to whoever you need to within this massive organization too, right? And so I think that's pretty cool, because not only are they in every community, so have networks within each community, but then also offer employment opportunities within the organization. And isn't that what it's really all about, is being part of that family?
Yeah.
They also offer training for businesses. So they'll offer training for staff, not just on the autism spectrum, but for the public to have better awareness and understanding of autism. So I think that's very valuable. I think they've worked with a couple of emergency response teams as well, of how to best assist somebody with autism.
Right. I think that's critical because, you know, as a business owner myself, I will not understand someone's specific autistic needs unless I know them very well ahead of time and know, you know, what type of autism they have, and where they need help and where they don't, and where they could excel, and where they do need support. And so from a business owner myself, I think that is a massive benefit. And I can see that becoming a bigger and bigger thing all the time. I know there's a labor shortage right now in BC and across Canada in many ways. And I think there's many autistic people out there that could be doing more in the workforce than maybe there is right now. So.
Oh, yeah. So I'm a Special Olympics coach in Delta, and in Delta, BC. And we know of a few companies in Delta that are very friendly to our athletes. And it just seems to be those certain pockets. But I think that's because there's that leadership there that understands and makes accommodations and is very welcoming. But I mean, that's not enough, right? And it also just limits them into certain skill sets as well, depending on where they want to work. So we certainly need to do more in that space.
Yeah,
I think general awareness is needed. To speak to somebody, like you talk about William and you meet William, you've met William, you know, everyone's different. And I think the general awareness surrounding it needs to be more public. It needs to be talked about more. There is so much stigma. I appreciate, Derek, even you sharing your story, because there's a lot of people, a lot of parents and families out there that don't want to talk about it. When William was first diagnosed, my husband didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to make it known. He said, I don't want my son to have this label.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's where it boils down to, is people are afraid to speak up. And during the whole advocacy through this past year has really brought into light, like, and I'm really hoping with me talking about it so much and creating this advocacy group that more parents and families aren't as scared to speak up and really advocate about their children, or even talk about their success stories. Like, we have so many success stories from William, and yes, there's hard days, but a lot of them are really great. And I love sharing them.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, because I was sort of the denier in the relationship too, or the guy that didn't want to talk about it as well. So my little guy is only 3 years old, so it's pretty early to diagnose autism, and so I was like, oh, he's just behind, it's totally fine. And my wife Katrina was looking into things, and she was digging really good, and she said, oh, I think there's a problem here. And so we got him assessed, and it was like, yeah, he has a severe case of autism. And I know for me that was really hard to take. And I got plugged into sort of a local network for parents with kids with autism in Calgary here, and I thought it was incredibly helpful just to get some advice and opinions and perspective from other parents that, hey, it's going to be okay. And if you have a network to support you, you can actually, the child or the adult can go a long ways in life. It's not over because you have an autism diagnosis.
No.
And kids can move up and down the spectrum too, which I didn't realize either, with therapies and supports and good support programs and all that type of thing. So I definitely probably relate to your husband on this one, where it's like, you don't want the label. It's like, it sounds bad.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I think autism sort of behind, the mental health movement, where I feel like there's still lots of stigma with, you have a mental health issue, but it's still, that's obviously still there, but autism might be even worse than that. And I think there needs to be a lot more work. And so I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Ali or Elena.
Well, to Elena's point, you meet one, and she's actually the one who taught me this. You meet one child with autism, you have very much met that one child with autism. And so it is a personal journey for absolutely everyone. And, I think when it comes to the advocacy part of it, if you're blessed and fortunate enough to meet William or anyone like William, you then fall in love and want to do everything you can to help William, right? And so I've met Elena through this advocacy network and all the work that she does. And then I get to meet all of these other parents and these families who are just fighting for everything that they possibly can for resources for their children. I mean, certainly we've seen a lot of that here in BC, because the provincial government was trying to impose a model in which you were taking away funding, individual funding from families. And essentially what I was learning through these parent networks, it was that just wasn't going to work. And so they have made a splash. They have gone to the legislature and taken over that front lawn, and you can see them in the news, and it's wonderful to see. But it's very, very personal. Whereas maybe other issues and other stigmas, they affect more families, right? And so I think for us, we just have to work a little bit harder and a little stronger and more passionately, just because it doesn't affect as many people.
I don't want people to miss what you said right there, Ali. I think that's really key, is that you've met one child with autism or one person with autism, you've met one. And it's so vastly different where kids and adults are at on the spectrum, and their needs are so dramatically different. So if anyone picks up anything from this episode, I think that is a critical part of the stigma and understanding of people with autism. So, but yeah, let's talk about that. Governments, what do you think they're doing right? Where do you think they need to improve, especially from a BC context? Ali's obviously a BC specialist that works with us here, but so I'd maybe like to hear from both of you, but Elena, if you want to go ahead and with your thoughts.
Sure. I think the first step, now Premier David Eby stopping the elimination of individual autism funding, I think that was a great first step for him. It's now, let's hope he keeps his promise and doesn't try to take it back. I've always said from the very beginning that they need to build upon the current system and to support more kids through BC, but not tear it down and strip something away from something that's working for thousands of kids. I do think we're BC can improve is the retention of service providers, as well as the diagnosis wait times. It's unacceptable that kids are sitting on a wait list for years, or parents are having to pay thousands of dollars for private diagnosis.
Right.
So
That's a good point. We had that problem too, is we paid for someone to diagnose the kid early, because he's 3 years old, but it might not be till he was 5 where he could actually get diagnosed, because of the wait times. And that's in Alberta, which I think are maybe slightly better than BC and Saskatchewan, from what I understand. Even the person that we got it done by, he isn't even going to be doing them anymore, because he's moving to Ontario or something. So Alberta only has, I think, just a small handful of people that will do this even privately. So I feel like, from a parent with a kid with autism, there needs to be far more options, private and public, for that.
I agree. Early intervention is critical. William was diagnosed in 2018, so he was 3, almost 4, and it was early intervention. It was we started while we were on the wait list. We did speech pathology privately. We paid out of pocket for that, and we waited until he got his diagnosis, and then we built the home team, and he's had that ever since. But the crucial part is the individual funding too, I think, because it does give the parents and families the choice. They need to be able to pick their service providers. You can't just have anybody come in to help your child, because if it doesn't fit, then you're not going to see progress. And you need to be able to pivot when the child's needs are changing, right? And that definitely gives the parents the option for that.
Yeah, it depends where you live too, who's available, and if the person could make it to you, or how that all looks. I know that's complicated. Even in a city like Calgary here, it's like it's such a large, sprawling city, if people know Calgary. And in BC would be, Vancouver would be very difficult to get from one end of Vancouver to the other. So you have to find people sort of in your local area too, especially if they're coming to your house weekly to do speech therapy or food therapy, or anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a question. I think about how big BC is, and I think about how different each province is, and accessibility to these sorts of things. What are the limitations or the benefits for things like Zoom or online resources? Or is there a focus on in-person resources?
So I think through the advocacy, we spoke to a lot of families, and virtual doesn't work. From a personal standpoint, during COVID, we tried to do speech pathology and physio, like OT, through Zoom, and literally William would say hi and walk away. The focus isn't there. You really need that personal in-person engagement to really keep them engaged throughout the session, and to see the results of it. I'm sure there's kids there that could really benefit from it, but I think from what I've heard from families is it needs to be in person and in an environment that works. Like it can't necessarily be center-based, because you've got bright lights, you've got other kids, like in a home environment or an environment that's comfortable for the child. It's just better for them.
That's been our experience too. We tried to do some food therapy over Zoom, and very difficult. It's okay for training parents, I find. In some situations you can get some resources that way, but you're right. I think in person and in the home is the best, which is difficult, but there's providers that do this type of work all day, every day, that will come to homes, and they get it, and it does work very well. It's just, I agree, you need that individualized funding is definitely the best model to follow. So that's one side of government, is the funding model and building on that in BC. Is there anything else that you think governments are lacking? Do you think they lack awareness, understanding?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do. I think for this, for the hub model to even come into play just shows the lack of understanding and awareness surrounding autism. The minister, there was no consultation with the autism community before this was put into play. Parents received an email, and that's how they were told that their funding was going to sunset in spring of 2025. So the terminology they used, I really jumped in when this was announced, and I dug through, the solicitation documents and the framework documents, and there was just, you could tell there was no understanding surrounding autism at all.
Right. Yeah, that's a big problem. And well, I think that's the value of having the Canuck Autism Network as well, is that the government a minister can go talk to you in the network or another staff member in the network and get consultation done properly. Where if this network does not exist, you don't have anybody to do that. And so I think that's a huge value of the organization.
Yeah, and I think it's valuable too, like for the government to go to the parents, or the organizations it's so important to have them as even a stepping stone, but like to talk to the parents that are living this daily. I think that is crucial for them to really understand what parents go through on a daily basis and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ali, you had another thought there?
Yeah, one of the beauties of this friendship that I've had with the Lawson family and just learning more and more about this is that I would be very interested to see federal leadership in bringing this together. I've just learned that from provincial jurisdiction to provincial jurisdiction, they fall under various ministries. So health or children's services or other, and every province is doing their own model that works for them, and that's brilliant. But I think that the federal model really has the opportunity to bring us together here under one umbrella and create some of that unison from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
That's a good point. That's something good to advocate for on the federal level, is shared understanding across the country of what needs to be done, and sort of some agreement and unity there, I think, is very valuable.
Absolutely.
I know we need to wrap up a bit here. Those are good advocacy points. Just tell us something fun or funny that William does. Maybe I'll let you both kind of share a quick story about something interesting that William does and that gets you to smile.
So he's a big Minecraft guy. I was telling Ali about this yesterday. So it may not be funny, but it's amazing. He's 7, and what he does in Minecraft just blows my mind. I've talked to a couple of my husband's friends and told him what he does, and they don't even know how he does it. He does it on a PlayStation, and supposedly you're not even supposed to be able to do it. It was half the stuff he does from that. But he's built car washes and dancing soldiers and roller coasters that go underwater. It's amazing. He's actually he's created so many worlds that he's pretty much jammed the PlayStation that we have to probably get a new one. But the worlds he's created is amazing. He's very mechanical. You put him in front of anything, like he's got circuit boards. He doesn't want your help, and he'll put them together. He'll get the fan going. He'll get the music playing, the lights on. He is so mechanical and so smart that way. So we're very, very proud of him.
Well, I think that's important to note is, I mentioned this earlier, but a lot of people think, autism people are slow or bad, or there's just negative stereotypes, but they can be absolutely brilliant at something. And I think people forget that sometimes their minds work in such a different way than maybe mine does, or Ali's or yours, Elena, that we can't even comprehend what they can do as opposed to us in certain areas. So
yeah,
and
one thing I do want to add too about the stigma or misunderstanding is when people assume because they're not giving you eye contact, they're not listening, or they're not looking at you, they're not listening. That is not the case. My husband and I were talking about that last night, and he listens. Like, you think he's not listening, he listens, and 3 weeks from now he'll bring a conversation up that you had and you were like, oh, you were. So there's definitely that misunderstanding too.
Yeah, for sure. Ali, do you want to share a quick one? Do you have one, William?
I do. So when I very first met William, we met at a political rally with thousands of people. And he came up to me and immediately he just started asking me all of these questions. And he was so curious about what was going on and who was on the stage and what the process is. And if when he was first diagnosed, Elena, at 3 and nonverbal and, having those difficulties building those relationships, I became William's best friend within the first 5 minutes. And I think that that was just such a beautiful thing in what the possibilities are with that early diagnosis and that advocacy and the work that you and your family have put into ensuring that William's successful in life. He certainly is building those beautiful relationships, and I'm just so fortunate to be one of his friends.
That's great. Well, and that's the journey we're on too, with our little guy, Evander. He's, diagnosed at 3, nonverbal. So it sounds like a very similar story to you, but I know people have great success when they're able to get around a network and have supports and systems and programs in place to have these kids go on to do amazing things in their life, where if they didn't have that, they might not succeed at all, or in a very small way if they didn't have that intervention. So I think what you're doing is a very good thing, both of you. And I know MASH is happy to be part of it. This is the virtual check presentation. It's not a real check, but I promise to send a real one. This is $2,500 for the Canucks Autism Network. So thank you very much
so much
for all you do. And maybe one day I can meet William and become best friends with him as well.
Yes.
And maybe William could meet Evander and teach him a couple things or two about life and be his, kind of big brother mentor or something at some point. So
I'd love that.
Next time you're on the island, I'll ring you up and we can chat some more.
Please do. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much to both of you for what you do and the advocacy work that you do, especially for Ali, that's involved in so many different things and makes friendships and connections everywhere. It's inspirational to me. So thank you all very much. And thanks everybody for listening. If you are looking for an organization to give to, Canucks Autism Network. I think you heard about it. I think it's very important to do. Help some families, help some kids. It's very meaningful. So Merry Christmas, everybody. And we'll talk to you next time. Recording over.